My fiance betrayed me with my married sister. When I told my parents, they asked me to stay quiet to protect her marriage and reputation. Then, at my wedding, she showed up uninvited, fully dressed, in white. I, 42 female, have had a prosperous career as a research professor at a prominent institution. But I have always been the disappointing daughter in my family. I had to tell my tale now after decades of silence. Since we were small, my younger sister Ava, 38, has been the golden child, and their obvious partiality has finally reached a breaking point, shattering our entire family dynamic. The faint sting of comparison permeates my earliest recollections. When I was 8 years old, I recall sitting in my room excitedly reading my scientific books as my mother's voice could be heard downstairs. "Why can't you be more gregarious like your sister?" At the age of 6, Ava had already captured our parents' attention by entertaining their acquaintances in the living room with her theatrical acts. I spent hours disassembling and reassembling old clocks, interested in the mechanics of how things worked, while Ava was performing and receiving all the attention. It was an early pattern. I requested a chemistry set for my 10th birthday, but instead, I received some used novels, because books are more practical. 2 months later, Ava expressed interest in taking dance lessons, and our parents unexpectedly found money for private instruction complete with new ballet shoes and specially designed tutus. That same year, when I sought to join the school science club, Mom groaned about the cost and advised me to concentrate on making friends instead. In those early years, my lone family ally was my grandma Martha. Her home, which was only a few blocks away, turned into my haven. I would spend weekends with Grandma Martha, while my parents took Ava to acting classes and dance performances. Before she retired, she taught science in high school, and she fostered my curiosity in a manner that my parents did not. "Your mind is a gift," she would say, as she taught me about the constellations from her backyard, or assisted me in doing easy experiments in her kitchen. When we were teenagers, the difference in how we were treated became glaringly apparent. My renewable energy project won the state science fair when I was 14 years old. My parents said they had to take Ava to a crucial audition, so they didn't even go to the ceremony. Our parents gave Ava a lavish celebration that year, inviting the whole extended family and even hiring a photographer after she was cast in a small role in a local theatrical performance. High school was a haze of scholastic success that was not acknowledged at home. In addition to maintaining a 4.0 GPA, I served as president of the scientific club and editor of the school newspaper. Ava was starring in school plays and dating the football captain at the same time. Her social life and her theater endeavors were the topic of every dinner talk. If my academic achievements were recognized at all, they were just given a cursory nod. I had obtained a full scholarship to study biochemistry at a prominent university by the time my college acceptance letters arrived. When Ava decided she wanted to go to a pricey private institution for performing arts, our parents sold our vacation cabin to pay for her education. My mother's response, rather than one of pride, was, "At least we won't have to worry about your tuition," they remarked. "Ava shows such promise, we can't let her talent go to waste." I pushed myself into my studies during my undergraduate years, finding comfort in the lab, where my intelligence and dedication were at last acknowledged. My teachers supported my academic endeavors and encouraged my research, becoming the mentors I had always desired. I received full financing for a prestigious PhD school after graduating with honors. Ava received a call back for a commercial audition, so my parents left early even though they were at my graduation. I effectively and steadily developed my career during my 20s and 30s. I obtained substantial research funds published widely, and at 40, I was granted tenure, which is an uncommon accomplishment in academia. However, the topic of Ava's most recent acting career or her marriage to Richard, a prosperous real estate developer, always came up during family get-togethers. The conclusion drawn from my molecular biology research achievements was, "Oh, Emily's still doing her science things." And when I met David, a researcher in my department, I felt like I had finally found bliss. He seemed to share my enthusiasm for scientific advancement and to comprehend me. Our partnership developed organically as a result of our same interests, and we worked together on multiple papers. I believed that when he proposed last year, I would finally have a typical milestone that my family could recognize and celebrate. However, things fell apart in the most catastrophic way last week. In order to finish some data for our most recent paper, I stayed late at the lab. I discovered David and Ava sharing a passionate hug on his desk when I went to his office to deliver the results. My fiance and my married sister were having an affair. Even worse than the heartbreaking betrayal was what transpired afterward. Our parents were immediately worried about Ava when I told them. My mother begged, "Please don't tell Richard. Think about your sister's marriage. He has a prenup, she'll lose everything if this gets out." In agreement, my father said, "These things happen, Emily. You need to be the bigger person here." I've been the bigger person for 40 years. When they held lavish celebrations for Ava but missed my birthdays, I remained silent. They flew across the nation to attend Ava's community theater performances, but I remained silent when they missed my PhD defense. When they told me I needed to learn how to be financially independent, but assisted Ava in purchasing her first home, I swallowed my hurt. Amidst all of this turmoil, an unforeseen event occurred. I met Michael at a university fundraising event 3 weeks ago. He was come to deliver the ideas for our new science facility. He is a 45M architect who creates research facilities. When I discuss my work, Michael listens with true attention, unlike David, who frequently engaged in intellectual competition with me. He poses intelligent queries and discusses his own imaginative technique for creating environments that support scientific advancement. When I called my grandmother Martha last week to tell her about Michael, she detected the shift in my voice. She remarked, "You sound lighter, dear. Tell me about this architect of yours." We spent 2 hours discussing everything, including how Michael's eyes light up when he talks about how art and science intersect in his designs, how he asked me to comment on his early sketches for the new research wing, and how when we reconnected for coffee, he remembered every detail about my work. There is a clear difference between how my family treated David and how they responded to Michael. Whenever I brought about David at family get-togethers, they would instantly turn the topic to Ava's most recent accomplishments. However, my parents really stopped their normal compliments on Ava's acting career to listen when I brought up Michael, my aunt, during a recent family dinner. Naturally, they were able to change it to Ava in a matter of minutes. "An architect, huh? Did you know that a well-known architect is married to Ava's yoga class friend? Tell Emily about him, Ava." I recognize the irony of my current circumstance. I've been a successful professional for decades, receiving recognition that my folks hardly notice. My mother is mainly worried about whether I'm getting enough light in the lab, even though I've published groundbreaking research that may result in new treatments for genetic illnesses. Ava, on the other hand, has alternated between little parts in community theater shows and commercials, and she has given the attention of an Oscar at every audition. For my work on cellular regeneration, I was awarded the coveted Morrison Grant last month. In my field, it's a huge accomplishment because only 3 researchers are chosen year nationwide. My mother said, "That's nice, dear, but did you hear about Ava's latest role when I called to tell her the news?" In a national ad, she has 3 complete lines. They celebrated Ava landing the commercial part with a family supper later that week. My grant was not mentioned. In fact, I had visited David's office to show him the grant acceptance letter the day I saw him and Ava together, since we had collaborated on some of the initial research. I assumed he would be pleased. Rather, I discovered him with my sister clutching the doorframe in disbelief as my engagement ring glinted on my finger and her luxury dress was tied up around her waist. The events that followed seemed to have been a blur. David's rambling justifications about feeling neglected because I spent too much time in the lab, Ava's casual, "Oh, Emily," as she adjusted her clothing, and my parents' anxious calls after I told them, all of which were intended to preserve Ava's marriage and reputation. Nobody ever inquired about my emotional state. As usual, I went to my lab the following day. My haven has always been science, the one field where hard work and intelligence are regarded more highly than flamboyance, and where outcomes are more important than showmanship. I was able to spend a few hours immersed in actual problems with measurable answers, as my graduate students talked about their most recent research. However, something had changed within me. For the first time in my life, I felt outraged rather than just wounded by my family's actions. I'm actually furious. It was a powerful, freeing wrath instead of the silent resentment I'd harbored for years. I recognized that I no longer needed their approval after glancing at the grant letter on my desk, the papers I had published, and the students eagerly awaiting my direction. It had been years since I needed it. I had dinner with Michael that night. Since the fundraiser, we had been hanging out informally, but I had been reluctant to divulge too much about my family's circumstances. I felt comfortable telling him everything because of his consistent presence and sincere interest in my opinions. His architect's eyes were analytical and concentrated as I explained 42 years of systematic dismissal and favoritism, and he listened without interjecting. Michael was silent for a while after I had done speaking, then he said something that gave me a whole new perspective on my predicament. In the field of architecture, we occasionally come across structures that appear flawless on the outside, but have serious structural problems that cannot be resolved by cosmetic remodeling. In these situations, the most considerate thing we can do is admit that the structure is no longer safe and construct a new one. I've tried being the ideal daughter, the smart researcher, the understanding sister, and I've minimized my accomplishments to avoid overshadowing Ava, and downplayed them to spare my parents the cognitive dissonance of having to acknowledge them while maintaining their narrative of Ava as the special one. Heck right, I've spent my entire life trying to fix a fundamentally flawed family structure. Grandma Martha, who is 92 years old and still as sharp as ever, always sees right through the dynamics of our family. Last night, I had supper with her. Your parents have spent so much time making Ava the star of their show that they've forgotten there are other stories worth telling, she added, swirling her tea with a poise that belies her advanced age. But you, my dear, have been writing your own story all along. Perhaps it's time to stop letting them edit it, she continued after taking my hand. I am writing this now because I have made up my mind. Michael and I have been talking about getting married, not engaged yet, but headed that way. And when the time comes, I will not have a large family wedding, nor will I invite my parents or Ava, who will inevitably try to make it about her in some way. Instead, I will have a small celebration with the people who have truly supported me, including Grandma Martha, my Aunt Linda, my coworkers who appreciate my work, and Michael's family who have shown me more sincere interest in 3 weeks than my own parents have in 42 years. I let Ava's attempt to call me go to voicemail yesterday, and she left a message saying that I'm overreacting to the situation with David and that she wanted to explain. She concluded by reminding me that she is my only sister and that family should forgive each other, which I deleted without answering. For the first time in my life, I'm putting my happiness ahead of my family's meticulously crafted story, choosing to be surrounded by people who appreciate me for who I am, rather than who they wish me to be, and celebrating my accomplishments without downplaying them to stroke someone else's pride. But here's the thing, I'm a scientist, and I deal in observable facts, and the facts are that they broke up this family long ago, piece by piece, every time they chose to devalue one daughter in order to elevate the other. I know there will be fallout when my parents realize I'm serious about cutting contact. They'll probably tell everyone that I'm being dramatic, that I'm jealous of Ava's success, and that I'm destroying the family. I have my research, my students, my grants, and now possibly a partner who sees me clearly and values what he sees. So here I am at 42, finally prepared to do the most important experiment of my life, seeing who I can be without the weight of their expectations and disappointments. Perhaps that's more than enough. Perhaps that's everything. First update: 3 months have passed since my previous post, and a lot has transpired. Let's start with the good news. Michael and I are officially engaged. He proposed last weekend while we were going over the final blueprints for the new research center. He had concealed the ring in a blueprint tube, and it was the ideal combination of thoughtful, subtle, and wholly us. Let me give you a little background so you can see how far I've come. After the David and Ava disaster, I threw myself into the new research facility project, and working with Michael became my haven, as my family called me non-stop to ask me to forgive Ava and keep the peace. Michael and I spent long hours talking about how to create the ideal laboratory spaces. The interaction itself was a huge contrast to my experience with David, who made the proposal at a department meeting, making it all about getting attention from the public. With David, everything was a competition, who had more publications, whose research was more innovative. Michael, however, made it personal and significant. My Aunt Linda, who was sincerely delighted for us, sent the bad news to my parents, and within hours, my phone was overflowing with messages. "Why didn't you tell us you were seeing someone serious?" was Mom's initial reaction rather than congratulations. "Ava may have compared you to her friend's architect spouse." The guilt-tripping then began. We should have been the first to know, we your parents. It didn't matter that they hadn't inquired about my life once in the 3 months since the David incident. They were too preoccupied with helping Ava cope with the anxiety of possibly being discovered having another affair. Mom called in tears, claiming that I was denying Ava her position as maid of honor and family tradition. When I reminded her that Ava wasn't even invited, she fell silent for a full minute before giving a speech about forgiveness and family ties. That's when the real drama began. Richard has been aloof ever since David, my ex-fiance, began working as a personal trainer at his company's fitness center. Yes, you read correctly. David quit academia to pursue a career in personal training. It seems that he and Ava have been seeing each other at the gym. Richard isn't aware of this yet, but people are talking about it. During this trying time, Ava has been phoning me every day and left messages about how she needs her big sister. In contrast, my research has thrived amidst all of this turmoil. Last week, we were awarded further funding for our cellular regeneration study, and the grant committee particularly mentioned the creative lab design Michael and I created together as a contributing reason. Grandma Martha was thrilled when I contacted her to tell her the news. "That's my girl," she remarked proudly. His mother, a retired judge who truly knows the complexities of the situation, said me something that truly spoke to me. Family isn't about sharing DNA, it's about sharing respect. Michael's family has been incredible throughout this entire ordeal. One of my best friends is his sister, a professor of literature. Michael and I had our first real date in the botanical gardens, where he had asked me to discuss the greenhouse specifications for the new research facility. We ended up talking for hours about everything from architectural history to photosynthesis, which is why the wedding planning has been surprisingly calm, mainly because we are keeping it small and meaningful. Grandma Martha, who has been more of a parent to me than my own parents ever were, is the only member of my immediate family who will be there when Michael and I meet with her tomorrow to show her our wedding preparations. And to be honest, it seems perfect. Michael joins me for some sessions, and his insights as an architect often provide interesting perspectives. Emotional boundaries are like load-bearing walls. They're not about keeping people out. They're about maintaining structural integrity, he said in our most recent session. I've started going to a therapist to process all of this, and she's helping me understand that it's okay to set boundaries even with family. For now, I'm concentrating on my research, my future spouse, and finally putting myself first. I'll provide another update once we have a clear wedding date. For the first time in my life, I feel appreciated and seen for who I am, not because I'm someone's sister or daughter. Second update. 2 more months have passed since my last update, and I wish I could report that things have improved with my family. The wedding is in 3 weeks, and instead of being a happy period of preparation, my parents and Ava have caused yet another family crisis. We meticulously organized everything: a small ceremony in the botanical gardens, followed by a private reception. I made it clear to my parents that Ava was not invited, and the guests were chosen to include my grandmother Martha, a few close relatives who have always been there for me, my coworkers, and Michael's family. My Aunt Linda called to warn me after overhearing Ava boasting about the surprise she was planning for my wedding, and it turned out that she had already purchased a dress that, in her own words, will show everyone what a real star looks like. I learned yesterday that my parents had not only informed Ava about the wedding details, but had actively encouraged her to attend. When I confronted my parents, they pretended that they were helping me. "We couldn't let you make the mistake of excluding your only sister," Mom said, adding, "She's got a beautiful speech about sisterly forgiveness. It will make the wedding so much more meaningful." This was the most frustrating part. They responded, "But she's going through such a difficult time with Richard. He's been so cold to her lately, and she needs her family support." I had to reiterate that someone who had an affair with my ex-fiance is not allowed to speak about forgiveness at my wedding. With his exact words, "The only dramatic performance happening at our wedding will be our vows." Michael, who has been tremendously supportive throughout this whole ordeal, quickly phoned our wedding venue to set up extra security after I informed him of Ava's planned intrusion. The irony that Ava's marriage to Richard is disintegrating at the same time that I'm starting a new life with Michael is not lost on me. Richard has finally begun to inquire about her frequent gym visits with David, and my Aunt Linda claims that there have been some tense arguments at their home. Nevertheless, in my parents' eyes, this makes Ava the victim who requires assistance, rather than the mastermind behind her own demise. In addition to the gym, my colleague noticed David and Ava eating lunch together at a cafe close to the university, looking very intimate. I brought this up to my mother in the hopes that she would finally notice the pattern, but she dismissed it as Ava being a supportive friend to someone going through a career change. My parents tried a new strategy this week. Dad, who has never shown up at my lab without warning in my academic career, tried to persuade me that keeping Ava out would create a rift that can never be healed. The rift was created when you consistently chose her over me. It was widened when you dismissed her. Betrayal of my trust, I said, looking at him standing there, this man who had never taken an interest in my work. Don't worry about Ava. Grandma Martha, bless her, assured me. I'll be stationed at the entrance. She wouldn't dare try to get past me. Grandma Martha, who is 92 years old and still sharp as a tack and doesn't take foolish people well, offered to run interference on the wedding day. My research lab has become my haven during all of this chaos. The clarity of data analysis and the precision of scientific work are a welcome contrast to the emotional manipulation I'm dealing with at home. Michael's brother, who works in private security, has also arranged for a few colleagues to be present disguised as guests. I've hired additional security for the wedding, though it pains me that I have to protect my own wedding from my sister's intrusion. The venue has been given photos of Ava and strict instructions not to allow her entry. 3 weeks before the wedding, I should be thrilled about marrying the amazing man who supports my career, knows my boundaries, and loves me for who I am, but instead, I'm planning how to prevent my own sister from ruining my wedding day. My graduate students have noticed my increased presence in the lab, but they've been incredibly supportive. I will provide another update following the wedding regardless of Ava's presence. I am getting married to Michael. I will no longer allow my family's drama to overshadow my happiness. Third update yesterday was the wedding, and while I wish I could say everything went well, my family did manage to pull off one last dramatic moment, but this time something unexpected happened. The truth was revealed, and the fallout was both painful and freeing. Ava, as usual, wore a white dress that looked more appropriate for a red carpet event than a morning garden wedding, and our parents showed up at the botanical gardens. Despite all our precautions, my mother sobbing uncontrollably about how cruel it was to exclude them, while my father tried to reason with the security team. When Grandma Martha and Michael's sister came, I was in the bridal suite with them, and as I saw the chaos at the door through the window, something inside of me finally broke. It all came to a head when I stepped out to the entrance, still wearing my wedding dress. After years of being the nice daughter, being silent as they denigrated me and watched them justify Ava's actions. Emily, how could you do this to me? I'm your sister. I came here to support you, to show you how much I love you, Ava said as she launched into her performance. When she saw Richard's car arrive into the parking lot, she stopped talking. Yes, it was Richard, her husband, who had reportedly followed her there. A scene from a movie played out when Richard confronted Ava about her relationship with David. Despite her best efforts to deny it, David called her phone, which was on speaker, and everyone heard him ask whether she would still be coming over later. My mother then turned to me and exclaimed, "Look what you've done. If you had just invited your sister properly, none of this would have happened," rather than confronting Ava about her actions. The last straw was that I answered in a surprisingly composed voice, "No, Mom, these are her decisions, not mine. She chose to have an affair with my fiance while she was married to attend my wedding, without being invited in white and to keep seeing David behind Richard's back." 3 years ago, I found Ava and my then-fiancé David together in his office. I began turning to our guests when I told our parents they never once asked how I was feeling. They were only concerned with protecting Ava's marriage because Richard has a prenuptial agreement. Richard's expression changed from hurt to angry. "A prenup, is that why you've been pretending everything's fine?" he asked Ava, who revealed everything through mascara and tears. The affair with David had been going on before he and I were engaged, and she had pursued him out of boredom, and because she couldn't stand that for once, I had something she didn't. My parents, who were still apparently more worried about Ava's failing marriage than their other daughter's wedding day, followed as Richard turned and left without saying another word, and Ava ran after him while yelling his name. Following their departure, an extraordinary event occurred. The remaining guests, which included my coworkers, Michael's family, Grandma Martha, and the relatives who had consistently witnessed Ava's deception, surrounded us in a protective circle. Michael's mother, a retired judge, then asked, "Now shall we have a wedding?" Michael's vows moved me to tears. He pledged to love me and to always see me, to value my mind as much as my heart, and to create a life based on mutual respect and understanding. The ceremony was lovely, with the gardens in full bloom and the morning sun casting a natural spotlight through the trees. My Aunt Linda told me today that Richard is divorcing Ava, and the prenuptial agreement means she will receive nothing. My parents are inconsolable trying to find out how to support her, but for the first time in my life, I don't feel compelled to join in the drama. In between hiking excursions and wine tastings, Michael and I will be visiting some of the most cutting-edge research facilities in the world on our 2-week honeymoon in New Zealand, which is the ideal fusion of science and leisure, much like us. Some of the most significant experiments are the ones where everything goes wrong, but you end up discovering something revolutionary, Grandma Martha observed when she called to see how I was doing this morning. As always, she is correct. Amid all of that craziness, I found my own strength. I'm not sure what the future holds for my family, but I'm concentrating on my new life with Michael, my research, and the family we've chosen, one based on genuine love and respect for one another rather than duty and rivalry. I have a feeling my parents will eventually try to get in touch with me, most likely to ask me to help Ava get back on her feet. It's time to begin my honeymoon with my amazing spouse who loves me because of my commitment to science, not in spite of it. This will be my last update. Cheers to fresh starts, unambiguous boundaries, and at last, the freedom to be who I truly am.